we will have a very last and very special guest. I think Gab will be joining soon. I think he will be receiving the invite to be a speaker in a few seconds. But then, so after this meetup, we will have Sub-Zero online happening later today. So if you got more interested about Polkadot and its technology, it's a great event. Here he comes.
Hey.
Hey, Gab.
How's it going?
How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we already got like 1,300 people join with us.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. And then this event was primarily in Korean, so I guess most of the people are from Korea.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
Looking at the chat log,
So yeah, and then we got like around like 100 questions from like researchers, developers, and students, and then we selected a few in the beforehand. So, yes, are you ready to answer them?
Yeah, I'll give shortish answers, and we'll see how many we can get through.
Okay, cool. So the first question is from like a crypto beginner student. What would be your advice for someone with little to no knowledge of Polkadot or blockchain in general who wants to build a Polkadot ecosystem?
A few bits of advice. One is understand what the technology is for. So when you should use it, when you shouldn't use it. Polkadot and crypto in general is part of a sort of widening peer-to-peer decentralization trend, which does give robustness, reliability, a certain amount of sovereignty for users, individuals, the ability to stop avoiding having these centralized nexuses of power and control that can result in a systematic failure. But there are some things that that just are so much easier if you architect them in a legacy way, and particularly at the moment with the technology still in its immaturity. So I would understand what it's for, when to use it, and that you can do by just reading all of the various peripheral material that you can find online about stuff like Web3 and sort of early Bitcoin stuff. Other than that, my other bit of advice is really just get stuck in, try stuff out, don't be afraid of making mistakes, do experiment, but try and connect as much as you can with the technology. This is still an industry in its youth, and so the best way of understanding it is to build with it.
And is that like how you started with blockchain in 2012, 2013?
Yeah, I started building as soon as something reasonable came my way, and it turned out that the thing that was reasonable was Ethereum. So.
Cool. Okay, and the next question. This is from a researcher, I guess, from Korea. Unlike any other layer 1 projects, is there a specific reason why you chose Polkadot to stay as like a minimum base layer and having all those parachains?
Well, we always think of Polkadot as a layer 0, basically because what you can normally achieve with layer 1s, you can achieve on parachains, and parachains are hosted by Polkadot. So that would place Polkadot at the level below these sort of traditionally level layer 1 systems and networks. And the simple reason is that it gave us the most flexibility. As an architect, as a designer, it's important to minimize your own mistakes on the systems that you are designing and architecting. Every design decision that you make, you're going to make a mistake. Like, it's just the reality. Over time, all design decisions are mistakes. You always want to change what you've done before. Sometimes you do well, and it's years before you want to change the design decision that you made. But the one way of guaranteeing that you will make fewer mistakes or less mistakes is by reducing the number of design decisions that you take, reducing your opinionation on your final product, and that means keeping it simple, keeping it minimal, and that's why when I sort of proposed Polkadot, I didn't want to make those design decisions about what these shards, what these parachains should be, how they should work, what logic they should have on them, what the account model is, anything like this. I wanted to keep those decisions until later, and ideally have them be flexible so that they can change over time as our understanding of the solution space increases, and as the use cases, as we better understand what people are going to use this stuff for. And the same goes for stuff like governance. It's not just parachains, but it's also like the fact that the relay chain can be upgraded. This is again, like the only real design decisions that we've made on the relay chain are the consensus to some degree, so like grandpa and babe, so the underlying network level consensus mechanisms, and the language in which we describe everything else, which is WebAssembly. And everything like beyond WebAssembly and these sort of basic consensus mechanisms, we basically pushed all of the rest of it until later, and kept it flexible so that we can change it as needed, because ultimately, this is again a youthful industry, and it's not the technologies that we have today are probably going to be a lot different to the technologies that we have in 3 years or 10 years. And if we want our projects of today to still be relevant in 3 years or 10 years, then we have to build this kind of flexibility in.
Cool. Nice. And the next question, in the current blockchain space, which sector, be it DeFi or Metaverse, whatever, which sector are you most excited to see the Polkadot ecosystem leading the innovations?
Well, this is always a hard one to answer because these are all very interesting usages of the technology. Of course, DeFi, if it has a big potential to alter the reality for much of the world, the economic, the financial reality for much of the world. So, I am interested to see if it can expand beyond its relatively narrow start. NFTs are, they encompass a lot of different things these days. And there are some elements of NFTs that I am interested in. I'm not a great. I don't know very much about the art world. Let's put it that way. And so I don't know if NFTs will continue to be relevant as simply pieces of art. But I do think that they have a lot of relevance in a few other ways. So one of them that I'm quite interested in is tracking whether a particular physical good is genuine or not. And I think having an NFT shadow a physical good, whether it's a piece of art or a consumable or a piece of clothing, luxury goods, coffee, I don't know. This is all, I think, quite an interesting proposition as we bring the transaction costs down, as we make the user interfaces, user experience for all of this stuff more slick, more agile. Then I think NFTs, we can also track other things beyond how much something is genuine, sort of expand it out to the fact that, for example, a person may have been in a particular place at a particular time. They have maybe they went to an early gig of an artist. I think we can start reimagining how artists beyond sort of selling NFTs directly can start to create some financial incentives for themselves by using NFTs. And then beyond that, I think the metaverse NFTs are very interesting. It's a very interesting proposition. And I used to work in the games industry. I spent a year or two making video games, and I always look back on it with some degree of happiness. And I think this could be a very interesting development for the basically to try to start connecting these independent and isolated worlds together. I mean, this is a little bit in the hands of video games publishers and the teams behind them, the IP holders, as to whether they want to allow the games to be kind of opened up into this metaverse. But I think it's a good idea. So I think eventually it's going to happen, regardless of whether the current incumbents usher it in themselves, or whether it's it takes the sort of more independent houses to band together and bring it in.
And I think we already started seeing a lot of experiments happening on Kusama around NFT.
Yeah, they're particularly in the art world, and I think this is going to continue. Having heard some of the conversations that are going around with what we could potentially do with the NFT system on Kusama and Stakemine, I think it starts to get quite exciting.
Is there like particular experiments or like projects, initiative that might catch your eye?
There are some initiatives that are going on in the background, and I don't want to steal their thunder by talking about them too soon before they're sort of ready. But definitely within the art world, the concept of verifying the authenticity of a piece of high value art is a costly one, and it's currently quite centralized. It's currently quite inefficient. So I think the NFT certification concept is a one that has legs, and I suspect that it might be something that we see in the not too distant future with regards to Kusama.
Cool, exciting. So, and the next question is a little bit outside of blockchain, because I mean, I guess any other blockchain industry would be related to Web3 in the future. So the next question is, what kind of technology outside of blockchain are you most looking forward to in the near future, and why? From Shimla developer.
I am looking forward to some good hardware technology. Like, I'm sick of my laptop eating up a lot of battery and spinning up fans every time I build Polkadot. So I'm actually quite looking forward to the next generation of laptops. This M1X or M2 or whatever chip that's supposedly very good. In terms of software, I haven't had much chance to do much gaming, but I am looking forward to explore some of the more like some of the latest I guess like breakthroughs in dynamic level of detail. So this idea of like there being a whole universe that you can explore that's all procedurally generated. It was pioneered by David Braben back in the early 80s with Elite, and then later Frontier, which is one of my personal favorite games. I think that these days, I mean, there's still like Elite Dangerous, there's Star Citizen, I think that this idea of like a very highly detailed virtual world, which was not You know, when you get down to like from the galaxy level down to the blade of grass level, it's not a very easy proposition necessarily to actually code it up to bring it in to the to gamers in a very convincing way. But I think it's something that people are making a lot of progress on. So it's something that I'm looking forward to explore. And the other thing is music and audio analysis, just basically for the purposes of visualization. This is something that I did a lot of well, some work on for my PhD project back in the early noughties, 20 years ago now. And it's yeah, still like going to see live music is something that I love. Going to see DJs, if it's good music, it's something that I also love. So the ability to create very compelling visual shows, but with AI, with machine learning, so that you can have like basically just DJ play into a box and have the box control the lights. This is, I think, a very interesting proposition and something that I would hope we've made a lot of, we will continue to make a lot of progress on.
Cool. Thank you. So I guess we are almost reaching the end of the session. Maybe would you have maybe the last word to the Korean community or Asian community in general?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting time that we find ourselves in. The world's beginning to open up, and within our particular sort of industry, it's a lot of interesting developments are happening, and particularly for what I'm working on, Polkadot Kusama, it's very exciting times. We have a lot of developments that are reaching maturity and production stage. So obviously there's parachains, which is Polkadot's sort of big thing, and that's very, very close now, very close indeed. Keep your ears open. We have the audit for parachains has been completed. We have a few minor corrections to make, but they're already underway. So we are very much expecting parachains to be production ready in the very near future. But then in addition to that, we've got some other exciting stuff. We've got bridges, so connecting our networks securely together, Kusama and Polkadot. We have like the latest means of language for communicating between blockchains that allows us to do all sorts of interesting things beyond just like token transfers, and so much more stuff that's being worked in the background. One thing that I do want to really touch on, though, is this concept of decentralization, peer-to-peer. I mean, Bitcoin began as a purely like peer-to-peer network. People ran their own nodes. If they wanted to send a transaction, they would send the transaction to that particular node, and it was a legitimately peer-to-peer system from the ground up. This was like 2009 kind of time, and this has got increasingly watered down as we see blockchain networks evolve. We see people cutting an increasing amount of corners into this element of decentralization. It's people are really testing just how much decentralization do we really need to have before for it still to be considered like decentralized. Before potentially you have authorities questioning whether or not this really is a decentralized network. Now, the thing about decentralized networks, peer-to-peer networks, is they are largely unstoppable, right? If everyone is doing it, and everyone can do it relatively privately, then there's not much you can do, right? As soon as it is simply a few people doing it and running these services for everybody else, then suddenly it ceases to be decentralized, it ceases to be peer-to-peer. And those protections, that kind of unstoppable protection that you get with early level Bitcoin, evaporates. And I think what we're going to see in the industry, or what we're already seeing, is, as I say, some of these projects, some of the newer projects that you can see in like the top 10, top 25. These have been, very comparatively heavily centralized, very much not peer-to-peer. And I think over the next months and years, we are going to see a realignment and a very clear definition by the world's authorities. And we're already starting to see this sort of happen in the US. We're starting to see some movement as well in China. We are going to start seeing the world's authorities take notice and be very clear about what really is peer-to-peer, and therefore kind of can get away with it, and what is not peer-to-peer and therefore will need to be regulated or potentially even outlawed. And this is another very interesting current that we're adding into the mix, and that's going to play out over the next year or two, I suspect. And so my advice would be keep a very clear eye on which projects are really peer-to-peer and which projects have a lot more centralization and are simply saying that they are decentralized, but not really going through with it.
Yeah, maybe as you mentioned a few weeks earlier, maybe go fully decentralized or to be defeated by the government or authorities.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for your time and amazing talks. It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I guess we look forward to visiting Korea or Asia in person sometime soon.
Indeed. Let's hopefully early next year.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you so much, Gav.